Hello, everyone, and welcome to the European School of Theosophy. We take this opportunity to thank the Blavatsky Trust for their continued support of our work. My name is Juliet Bates, and I am part of the team of the school. The school was founded in 1981 by Geoffrey Farthing and other theosophists, and this year we are focusing on the study of the secret doctrine. We are also offering lectures, online courses, and seminars on a variety of topics. So we suggest registering for our weekly newsletter so you can keep updated on our program and not miss anything. The EUST is a not-for-profit organization, and the large majority of our programs are free of charge. So please support the work of the school by making a donation. Our online lectures, but not seminars, are also transmitted live on our YouTube channel, and you can register to our channel by visiting the link you see on the chat. A healing circle is taking place once a month, facilitated by myself, and if you would like to participate or wish to include a name in our healing book, please send an email to eustheosophy@gmail.com. At the moment, the school is looking for a volunteer to help with our social media, and we need someone who could perhaps give 2 to 3 hours a week to help. So if you think that is something that you could do and have time for, please send an email to the school, as this is a great way of providing service and is very much needed. Thank you. This Sunday's lecture is by Edward Abdill, focusing on the question, is it a rope or is it a snake? Tomorrow's lecture will be by Mriganka Mukhopadhyaya, entitled Teaching Theosophy as a University Curriculum, Bridging the Gap Between Theosophists and Academics. Now, as you all know, the European School of Theosophy is publishing the Lucifer magazine. Lucifer was a monthly journal founded in September 1887 by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, and ran until August of 1897, when its name was changed to Theosophical Review. And what we are doing is taking all of the articles and pieces from the magazine and publish them into volumes, of which so far we have 9 volumes published to date, and the next is almost ready. More are coming soon, so if you would like more information, visit the website lucifer-collection.com. The way today's meeting will be conducted is that your microphones will be muted and you will not be able to unmute yourself. After the lecture, if you would like to ask a question, you can either write it on the chat or use the raise hand icon option. Your microphone will then be unmuted so that you can ask your question. If you need to leave the conference room during the lecture, please do so without announcing it on the chat, so as not to disturb the proceedings. A brief disclaimer now. The reviews and opinions expressed by the speaker and participants during the course of this lecture are their own and do not necessarily represent the views, opinions, or positions of the European School of Theosophy. Thank you for listening. And now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Edward Abdill. Ed joined the Theosophical Society in New York in 1959 when he was 24 years old. He is the author of The Secret Gateway, Modern Theosophy, and the Ancient Wisdom Tradition and Masters of Wisdom, the Mahatmas, Their Letters and the Path. He will soon publish A Journey to the Real, Memoirs of a Theosophist. Ed is past Vice President of the Theosophical Society in America and past president of the New York Theosophical Society. He lectures for the society throughout the United States and internationally. So Ed, we are all looking forward to hearing your talk on is it a rope or is it a snake? Welcome once again, and let me pass the word over to you.
Okay, are we unmuted? All right, thank you, Juliet. Nice to be here again. The question of is it a rope or is it a snake has to do with worldview. When we see something coiled in the road, some of us believe it is a snake, but others believe it's a rope. This illustrates how different people see the world, and the way we see the world has a profound effect on our values and our behavior. How we see the world has been called worldview. Now, usually I have a brainstorm or two here, but to save time, I'm going to summarize what we've gotten from the worldview brainstorms. To summarize what a worldview is, it's a way a particular culture sees the world as a whole. The nature of matter and spirit.
Okay, I will skip forward. I had all these wonderful slides up ahead, but
All right, what do you want me to do?
these are just some of the objectives and,
Yeah, I said that.
oh, okay. So now we have
Okay,
this
here-
optical illusion.
Yeah, Mary produced this optical illusion for us to show how different people see the world. One sees 4, the other sees 3. Which is the truth? Well, in a way, both are true, aren't they? So we're going to look at that today. So to summarize what a worldview is, it's, as I said, it's the way a particular culture sees the world as a whole. It's the nature of matter and spirit, consciousness, what is it? Does it survive death? The nature of humanity, meaning of life, if there is any, origin and destiny. Do we come from God? Do we come from nature? Nature of what is God and human beings? The origin and purpose of social structure, place of men and women and relationships between them, the value structure which derives from this, a real or stated worldview, which is actually revealed by our behavior. Sometimes our worldview is unconscious to ourselves even, but the way we behave in the world reveals how we perceive the world. So Fritjof Capra defines worldview paradigm as a constellation of concepts, values, perceptions, and practices shared by a community, which forms a particular view of reality that is the basis of the way the community organizes itself. J.L. Myers states that each individual has his own experiences, and out of them forms his worldview. So we will use the term worldview in 2 ways. First, to mean what an individual perceives by the real world, that which is meaningful to an individual. Second, to mean a common cultural view. Everyone has a worldview, whether they know it or not. The stated worldview may be different from the actual one. By their fruits ye shall know them. Remember, the worldview is a total picture. We can only highlight concepts within the worldview to give it meaning. Now, how do we get a worldview? Well, teachings of religion, science, society, school, the state, family, influence of our peers, parents, family, political figures, the role of the media, news, and entertainment, our personal experiences from love to war to death, sense data and interpretation given by society and ourselves. Now, the worldview gives rise to the concepts, values, and beliefs, and that gives rise to our behavior. Now, we get feedback from our behavior, don't we? We get feedback from what we do, how we affect others. So we can, when we get that feedback, we can either change some element of our worldview, or we can change our behavior. Sense data, our 5 senses, strongly indicate we are separate, not one. Yet we Theosophists say we are one. But our sense data denies that. It belies it. It makes it seem not real. So now, as I said, we can change our behavior or not. let's say a young woman does not like the color blue, but her mother wants her to wear a blue dress because her mother thinks that the daughter looks really good in blue. So she said, why don't you wear a blue dress? And the daughter says, I don't want to. So then the mother has a choice. She can either figure out how she can make her do it, you know, as we go walking along the street and see a young woman in a beautiful blue dress and say, well, isn't that beautiful blue dress? Wouldn't you look nice in that? And the daughter says, no, I don't want it. Or the mother can change her worldview and decide the aspect of her worldview and decide, well, you know, my daughter is an adult. She should make her own decisions. I should drop that pushing for a blue dress. So she could either change her behavior to get what she wants, or she can actually change an element of her worldview. Now, examples of the worldview and consequent values and behavior come up in cultures. In the Judeo-Christian Islamic worldview, in Genesis, we read, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. Now, in that view, human beings and nature are separate. Nature is alive, but it's not ensouled. The values and behavior are as property. Humans can own land. It's his God-given right. As its owner, he can do with it what he will. He can exploit it if he wants, because it's his, he owns it. Now, the Native American view was quite different from that. The Native American said human beings and nature are one. Nature is ensouled and sacred. The values and behavior that come from that, humans cannot own land as property. Their view was you could no more own land than you could own the air around you. If you said anything about owning land, it would be ridiculous to them because you couldn't own it any more than you could own the air. When the Europeans purchased, in their view, the Manhattan Island for not very much money at all, the Native Americans from whom they purchased it thought we are giving you the right to hunt and fish on the land. They didn't have any idea that the Europeans were going to claim ownership of the land and exclude them. It was a totally different worldview. The way there are at least three different ways that worldviews come about. Dr. Willis Harman, a professor of economic engineering and president of the Institute of Noetic Science, has suggested that, broadly speaking, there are three major ways people look at reality. M1 is materialism or materialistic monism. In that view, matter and energy is the one only reality. We learn about reality from the measurable world. There is no creator, ultimate meaning, or destiny. Morality and the like is subjective and results from biological determinism, personal history, or chance. That's M1, materialism or materialistic monism. M2 is dualism, Cartesian dualism. There's a dichotomy between the mind and matter. Perhaps the mind survives physical death, but mind is more likely a product of the brain and dies with it. Then we have M3, transcendental monism. Consciousness is primary. Reality is contacted through consciousness, not through the senses. Consciousness is first, not an end product. This is the closest to the Theosophical view, but the Theosophical view is best called non-dualism because both matter and consciousness are rooted in the eternal. in the TS worldview. Now, we might say there's an M4 that Joy Mills came up with. She added this view for theosophy. M4 maintains that both the subjective and the objective sides of reality arise from an unspeakable reality beyond the mind's ability to grasp. So now in M1 through M4, we are subject to creatures of our own, did I skip the next thing? No. We are subjective creatures, and our own worldviews will not conform completely to these worldviews. Our psychological and sensual components permit shifts, and many inconsistencies exist in our own worldview. In the Song of Myself, Walt Whitman wrote, "Do I contradict myself? Then I contradict myself." The resulting behavior. Let's consider some concepts and behavior that results from M2 with a bias in the M1 direction. Let's start with how that dominant view affects us collectively in a few cases. Science, for example. A largely materialistic M1 worldview dominates what is worthy of investigation. For what purpose and the means of investigation? The usual result is to investigate things which benefit human health and physical quality of life. The empirical method, measurement, is required. Results are not accepted unless the measurements can be repeated. Now, Dr. Rhine at Duke University nearly lost his position because he wanted to investigate ESP, extrasensory perception. The worldview of most scientists at the time was either M1 or M2. 2010 paper in a psychological journal on ESP met with fierce resistance. Many called it shameful that a respectable journal would publish such nonsense. Even the new physics doesn't necessarily change basic behavior. The physicist may not have changed his values or behavior at home. Eventually, of course, Dr. Rhine won out, and we now have parapsychological departments in universities. Medicine, holistic versus specialization, allopathic versus homeopathic, and alternative natural methods. Offending bacteria must be attacked as a separate organism. Heroic life-saving methods for the dying. Physical life is all there is. Vivisection, man is superior. He may use animals for his benefit. That has changed also. We get more of a holistic approach in medicine today than we did years ago. How is it changing business? Well, in a capitalistic society, competition. Each person is out for self within a company and between companies because each is separate and material wealth is highly praised. There's been some recent toward a holistic approach in business also. We may emphasize that the worldview is also changed by discoveries in science and medicine. 19th century scientists were convinced that ultimate reality was atoms that could not be split. Today, the atom has been split and many subatomic particles have been found. Einstein claims that matter is those regions of space in which the field has become intense. He said there is no room in the new physics for both matter and the field because the field is the only reality. Fields are non-material in character. No one has ever touched, seen, or felt or heard a field. We know they exist only because of the way matter behaves in their presence. Now we're going to transition to the individual worldview. Worldview includes more than what we think is real in terms of matter and consciousness. It includes the resulting value structure of a given society and each individual. It also includes the way we see ourselves and the way we perceive others as part of this. Now, I'm going to tell you a modern fairy tale, and listen carefully. In the fairy tale, there are 5 characters. You will be asked to judge each one of them. I know people don't like to judge, but in this hypothetical situation, you need to make a judgment. Whatever is told in the story is all you may consider. You may not add or subtract anything that any particular character does in the story. When finished, I'm going to ask you to decide which character you liked most and which character you liked least, even if you don't like any of them very much. And it'll be a gut reaction, just a quick reaction to who affected you the most in one way or another. Now, the story is that Annabelle Lee lives in LA. And what is LA? Where is LA? Most people say Los Angeles, but it's actually Lower Alabama. That's where Annabelle Lee lives. And she's to be married in the morning, and she is to be married to Michael, who lives on the other side of Gator River, so called because the river is filled with alligators. Now, during the night, a huge storm comes and wipes out the bridge. Annabelle Lee does not have a boat. The bridge is gone. She can't walk over to the other side. She can't swim the river because of the alligators. What is she to do? So Annabelle Lee thinks, I know what I'll do. I'll go ask Sam, the fisherman, if he will row me across to the other side. So Annabelle Lee goes and asks Sam. She said, Sam, I'm getting married this morning on the other side of the river, but I can't get there because the bridge has been washed out. I don't have a boat and I can't swim because of the alligators. Will you take me across in your boat? And Sam says, oh, I'm sorry, Annabelle Lee, but the storm destroyed some of my nets and I have to repair them so that I can go out and fish to feed my family. So I cannot take you. Well, Annabelle Lee is upset about that. She goes back to where she lives. She sat on the bank crying. Along comes our next character, Sinbad the sailor. He sees this beautiful young creature on the side of the river, and he stops and he says, what's the trouble, miss? And she tells him the whole story. I'm supposed to be married on the other side of the river. Storm wiped out the bridge. I don't have a boat. Sam said he can't take me because he has to repair his nets. And here I am stuck. He said, well, I can take you. She said, oh, that would be wonderful. But I have a condition, he says. You are so beautiful. If you have sex with me on the boat, I'll take you across. Well, at first she's horrified, but she really wants to get married. And she said, well, all right. So after sex, he says, that was great, Annabelle Lee. I'll take you over now. And he does. He takes her over to the other side of the river and deposits her there and says, have a great wedding. Now, Annabelle Lee is so happy she's on the other side of the river. She runs up to Michael's house and knocks on the door. Michael opens it, shocked to see her, and says, how did you get here? And she told him the whole story. Once Michael hears about sex on the boat, he's infuriated and says, I can't marry a woman who's done that, and he slams the door in her face. Now, our last character comes along, Sluggo. Sluggo sees this same gorgeous woman, is attracted to her just like Sinbad was, stops and says, what's the trouble? And she tells him the whole story. I'm to get married today on this side of the river, but I live on the other side and I couldn't get here because the bridge was wiped out. Sam said he couldn't take me. He had to fix his nets and I couldn't swim because of the alligators. And when I got here and Sinbad made me have sex before he dropped me off here, I went and told Michael the whole story and he slammed the door in my face and said he wouldn't marry me. Sluggo is furious. He goes over to Michael's house, pounds on the door. And when Michael opens the door, he slugs him and knocks him out cold. That is the end of the story. So, who did you like most or dislike the least? Annabel Lee, Sam the fisherman, Sinbad the sailor, Michael, or Sluggo? Just have a gut reaction, and you can put it in the chat if you want, but anyway, just have that gut reaction. No intellectualizing, no analyzing, just how did each of those characters make you feel? Were you really annoyed with one, or you thought one was not so bad? Just choose. If you put now, after you choose, maybe you can put in the chat, why did you choose these characters? If you chose Annabel Lee, why did you choose her? What made you choose Annabel Lee as the best of the five? Is there a chat?
There's a chat. Okay, so we've got Sluggo, Sinbad, and what were the characteristics of them?
Yeah, why did you choose Sluggo, or why did you choose Sinbad? What made you choose those two? Okay, liked Annabel Lee because she never gave up. Okay. Write these down.
They're in the chat.
Sluggo, he wasn't thinking of himself. Disliked Sinbad because he took advantage. Sluggo's empathy for Annabel. Okay, anything else?
A lot of people liked Sam because they felt Sam supported his family. He was a family man.
Yeah, and a lot of people liked Annabel Lee because she had love, they said. She loved Michael. So we can say that the things that are good.
We got blackmail.
Yeah, we got the bad things too here.
So Annabel Lee was persistent. Sam had the most consideration. He seemed to be caring. Sluggo wasn't thinking of himself. He was thinking of others. Sinbad took advantage of a situation. Sluggo had empathy. Sinbad used blackmail. Disliked Sinbad. Sluggo had an honest reaction. Okay, so we've done this little fairy tale in several places, and there's a lot of different things that people have responded with. I took out some of the brainstorms, but I think I left a summary here. So these were some of the positive characteristics.
Yeah, these are the positive elements that people named for the one or more of the five characters: honest, love, determined, true to self, persistent, reliable, resourceful, honorable, responsible, independent. Did not use other people. In other words, he wasn't an opportunist. Now,
these are continued. These are still positive.
Still positive. Courage to say no, duty, saw a chance, kept his word, put the cards on the table, helpful, stuck to his own principles, chivalry, saw a damsel in distress and helped, straightforward. Now, wouldn't you all agree that all of these things are good? I think you would. We'll go now to the negative qualities. Have you got them?
Yeah, but by the way, on the positive side, the stuck to his word, people saw that from Sinbad, the sailor, that he kept his word. He could have just had sex and then just left her on the same side of the bank, but he did keep his word. So that's why people saw that. He was open in his bargaining. She didn't have to accept it. So that was one of the things about Sinbad. A lot of people think Sinbad was awful because he was an opportunist, but That was one of the positive things that was given about him. And then the person that one of the people that mentioned that worked with bargaining, it was a bargaining agent. And he really appreciated, when one side or the other kept their word as to what they were going to do.
Yeah, it was a married couple, a little bit older married couple. And when her husband said he chose Sinbad, she was outraged. Oh my God, why did you choose Sinbad? And then she realized he worked with unions. He needed to have the cards on the table. So that's why he chose Sinbad, because Sinbad said exactly what he wanted. No holds barred. You can accept it or reject it. That's what I want.
Okay, so here are the negative.
Negative.
Oh, actually, there's more positive ones.
Oh, yeah.
I got pages and pages of positive ones.
Responsible, sympathetic, family was his priority, in service, willing to both give and receive, kept his word, did not use force, stood up for another, defended a person in distress, went against the majority view, stood for his principles.
Okay, so here's some negative ones.
Now the negative ones. Dropped own moral standards. That would probably be Annabelle, wouldn't it? Talked too much, too open. That might also be Annabelle. Felt she had to say everything that happened. Impatient. She could have waited for the wedding, She didn't have to have it that morning. She could have waited. Didn't have safe sex. Boring. His actions caused all the trouble. Very selfish. Would not help others other than his family. Inflexible. That would have been Michael, wouldn't it? Opportunist, it would have been Sinbad. Traitor, took advantage of a damsel in distress, driven by the flesh, narrow-minded, again, Michael, not husband material, violent, that would have been Sluggo. None of his business, interfered, never asked for the other side of the story, didn't think. Selfishness, self-centered, desperate, determined to get her own way at any cost, no morals, not helpful, not flexible, opportunist, use of others, violent, didn't listen to the other side of the story, vengeful, reacted with gut, not mind, narrow-minded, moralistic, and not understanding. Now, wouldn't you all agree that everything here is a negative quality, something that you thought was not good? So on the one side, we list all the good qualities, and on the other, all the bad qualities. And we probably all accept the good is good and the bad is bad. However, we prioritize them differently because of our experience, didn't we? Some people chose one character over another because of their own experiences in life. People who look for volunteers, like in the Theosophical Society, churches, or synagogues, they have a hard time getting volunteers. Somebody's always too busy. Well, Aunt Tilly's coming to town and I have to meet her at the airport. Whatever, they can't get volunteers. They don't like Sam at all because Sam is too busy with other things to help. So, and people who like Sam, whether they know it or not, subscribe to the Protestant work ethic. Work is the most important. The family is the most important. So these values come up because of our own experience in our own lives. So I hope that makes some sense to you, and you can see that you all agree to the good side and the bad side, and realize that you didn't all choose the same character because of your own experiences. Now, the Theosophical worldview is quite different, isn't it, from these different worldviews we've been talking about. The three propositions, the fundamental, there is a principle unspeakable, unthinkable, beyond the range of human thought. That first fundamental proposition, and the second on cyclicity, everything in nature that we can see or feel or touch or know about is cyclic. And the third, What is the third? For the minute, I can't remember. Anyway,
Cycles.
huh?
Cycles.
No, cycles was the second one. The evolution. Evolution is the third. The gradual unfoldment of the inner reality to the outer substance. So the golden stairs is part of the worldview, isn't it? Most of you know the golden stairs.
I have slides for most of that if you want. actual
Okay.
slides.
All right. Well, you can bring them up.
So this was the Theosophical worldview.
Oh yeah, the worldview.
This was written, I think, by the.
This was written by an education committee at the Theosophical Society in America. It included John Aljob, the professor of English,
Joy Mills,
Joy Mills, Dora Kuntz, Emily Sellon,
Renee Weber.
and Renee Weber, a philosopher, a teacher of philosophy at Rutgers University. So it had very educated and very knowledgeable people on that committee, and they came up with this statement about a theosophical worldview. It's based on those three fundamental propositions, as are the objects of the society. So the society reserves for each member full freedom to interpret any and all teaching. At the same time, it is dedicated to preserving and realizing the ageless wisdom which embodies both a worldview and a vision of human self-transformation. This tradition is founded upon certain fundamental propositions. The universe and everything within it are one interrelated and interdependent whole. Every being, animate and inanimate, from atom to galaxy, is rooted in the same universal life-creating reality. This reality is all pervasive. It can never be completely expressed by its parts, since it transcends all its expressions. It reveals itself in the processes of nature as well as in the deepest recesses of the mind and spirit. We recognize the unique value of every living being. Therefore, we practice reverence for life, compassion for all, sympathy with the need of all individuals to find truth for themselves, and respect for all religious traditions. Each human has both the right and the responsibility to choose the ways in which he or she practices these ideals. Theosophy promotes understanding and unity among people of all races and nationalities, philosophies, and religions. Therefore, all people, whatever their race, creed, sex, caste, or color, are invited to participate equally in the life and work of the society. The society imposes no dogmas, but points toward the source of unity behind all differences. Devotion to truth, love for all beings, and commitment to a life of altruism are the marks of the true theosophist. That's, I think, a wonderful statement that came out of the Theosophical Society in America. It's available. It can be emailed to anyone who wants it if you don't happen to have it. What's next?
I just have the three fundamental propositions.
Yeah, yeah.
you mentioned.
These are the three propositions quoted in the proem of the Secret Doctrine. An omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, in the words of the Mandukya Upanishad, unthinkable and unspeakable.
And these are condensings.
Yes, condensed versions.
They're not the full wording. The full wording, of course, is in the original.
Now, we might ask, why is it unspeakable and unthinkable? If you think about it, whatever we say, whatever word we use implies other, doesn't it? If I say up, it implies there's a down. If I say male, it implies there's a female. If I say mountain, it implies there are valleys. Every word denotes two aspects, the positive and the negative, or the one and the other. But the ultimate real is undifferentiated. It is the no thingness. Therefore, we cannot express it in words or thought. It is beyond words and thought. Okay, the second assertion is the absolute universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. An alternation such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking is a fact so common, so perfectly universal and without exception that it is easy to comprehend that in it we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe. The fundamental is the third proposition, the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root, and the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul, a spark of the former, through the cycle of incarnation or necessity, in accordance with cyclic and karmic law, during the whole term. No purely spiritual buddhi, that is divine soul, can have an independent or conscious existence before the spark which issued from the pure essence of the universal sixth principle, or the oversoul, has passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that manvantara, and acquired individuality first by natural impulse, and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts, checked by its karma, thus ascending through all the degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral and plant up to the holiest archangel, Dhyani Buddha. Now, the idea of an unconscious growth may be seen if we think about the animals. The fish didn't decide one day to get out of the water and walk on land. They didn't have any conscious control over their evolutionary development. Once we reach the human stage, it is said that evolution comes to a near halt until we individually take charge of our own nature. We can see this in psychoanalysis. I had a friend once who went to an analyst, and he thought he was going to buy a quart of milk in a deli. Here's the money, where's my cure? Well, it doesn't work that way, as you know. The analyst can help us find the cure, but we ourselves must find the problem and must find the solution. No one can do it for us. No one can digest our own food. We have to do it. So we have to have conscious control at the human stage over our evolutionary process. And it is said that no sooner we really begin to do that, our evolution is quickened. It is rapidly increased, so that the karma we would usually get over 3 or 4 lives is concentrated in one life. So all the difficulties that we need to overcome, the inner strength we need to develop, is pushed into one short life. And that, of course, is not a very pleasant process for us, is it? I mean, karma is, as they say, a difficult master, you know. So, but nonetheless, through the karma of our past actions, we learn to overcome the difficulties, we learn to develop inner strength. So I hope that has given you some ideas about this, especially how our own prioritizing of values shows a little bit about our own worldview. This exercise actually came from Mary, my wife, through the AT&T when she worked as a manager for the teaching computer programming at the telephone company in New York. She managed that department. And so she went to this workshop that was sponsored by AT&T. And she said she learned something from that. You want to say, or you want me?
It was, the idea was to understand whether you had some unconscious bias towards students and whether you unconsciously had opinions that would affect how they learned. And I learned that I was reacting negatively towards anyone who happened to be sort of loud and boisterous. I would, I would have a thought that was not conducive to a positive learning environment.
Avoid calling.
So, and it didn't matter, whether they were male or female, black or white, didn't really matter, old or young. It was if they were really, really loud and boisterous, I would, I had a bias against that.
Wouldn't call
Yeah, and I wouldn't call on them. I wouldn't, I wouldn't try to have them participate. So it would, things like that would come out that you never really thought about in terms of bias. And that was what this workshop was all about. I also have, if you want to go over them, slides on the, there's a road, but it's up to you whether,
No, I think I don't.
does
need
anybody have questions?
Questions and comments?
Would you like to stop unsharing the screen and we'll go for questions? Ed, if that's okay with you?
Okay, also, we have a website up there, which I've been trying to keep up to date. Ed's doing 2 talks next
Next week.
weekend. He's doing 2 talks.